Hello there, and welcome to the next episode. I'm not sure what number episode it is. The next episode of Teachers Talk. My name is Brian. Welcome to Teachers Talk, the podcast where teachers talk. I think that might be a good showrunner. That might work. My name is Brian Higgins. I teach AVID, English Language Arts, and Stagecraft and Drama in a large high school in Central Washington, in Wenatchee, Washington. So, Malia.
And my name is Malia Renner-Singer, and I teach AVID and Social Studies at Cascade High School in Leavenworth, Washington, which is a very, relatively small high school, especially in comparison to Wenatchee. And today, Brian and I are super excited because our guest is Mr. Brandon Harley. I used to teach at Wenatchee for a long time, and Brandon was my colleague. And I can't remember if you're my department head or no, you're never okay. But he was definitely my colleague and my buddy while I was teaching at Wenatchee. So this feels like a really fun little reunion that we have going on today.
Brandon, what do you teach that? Tell us about like the classes that you really enjoy teaching, really quick.
Well, I currently teach and have now for 14 years AP US History, and I also teach contemporary world problems and civics. But I've taught everything from world studies, world history, regular U.S. history. I taught online U.S. history for a decade, and I'm the senior class advisor here at Wenatchee High School too. So I just enjoy I enjoy teaching social studies. So regardless of the topic, as long as I can continue to connect in that way, that's the meaningful part of it to me.
That's awesome. I'm really excited to have you. We teach in the same school, which is fantastic. So I finally have someone on the podcast that I actually actively work with instead of a bunch of previous employees. Co-workers.
Am I the first Wenatchee High School interview?
Yeah. But we have, Malia and Cesar Mendoza. So
That's
two, awesome. So it's just like, it's like the podcast of abandonment over here. So
The podcast of abandonment.
So go ahead.
Can I just say one more thing about Brandon? Because Brandon is very modest. So he will never brag about himself. But as AP US History teacher, he has grown the program to incredible numbers. Like, I don't know, at one point I feel like he was teaching 200 kids AP US History because they all wanted to take the class because he's such a great teacher. And he really lives the motto that AP US History is for anybody, and I'm going to support you like crazy to make sure that you can be successful in this class. This is a class that's not exclusive. It's not for only certain types of kids. AP US History is for everyone. And so the kids know that, and that's one of the reasons why it's grown so big. So this is why it's super exciting, Brian, that Brandon is our guest today with our topic, because he lives it.
Yeah, he lives
Even
all that access. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, all about access.
Well, thank you. When I took the class, we had a former colleague, I don't know if you remember, the colleague was going to take the class. And there was only like 32 kids signed up, and that colleague left. And I think I was next on the call sheet, or somebody passed on it, and I ended up going to the training. And within a couple of years, I was really proud of the numbers that had grown. At one point, I think I had over 120 kids. I had 5 classes when we were on a 6-period day once, and that was rewarding, but also at the same time pretty nuts. I was spinning that year. So thank you for saying that. That's very kind.
The other thing that we do at the beginning of our episodes is we talk about fail, a recent fail, your biggest fail. It's really important that we, I think, that we're always understanding that failure is not final. So I'm going to share mine first, and then whoever wants to go next can share theirs while you're thinking about it. I have a student teacher right now, second semester. It's fantastic. My first student teacher. I cleaned up half of my computer today. It was great. It was so good because my desktop was cluttered. But as I'm transitioning one of my English classes, she's not an English major. She's a theater major. And I'm the one who teaches theater at the school. So she's stuck with all my English classes too. And I was like, well, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to do this lesson, and you're going to do the same lesson in the afternoon. And that we will transition these freshmen into senior authority. And I went through my lesson and I rocked it. And it's pretty easy. Just we're learning how to translate Shakespearean jargon and dialect. And she gets up, and I suddenly realize she doesn't know anything. Like, I've given her not even the most basic foundation of what I assume. I asked her, just like I do with students, hey, do you understand all the words in that sonnet? because you're going to have to define them for kids. She's like, yeah, I got it. No problem. And I was like, okay, I'll take that. And which is the worst thing you do with students too, because they're always going to say yes, so you leave them alone. And she got up there and someone asked about a word and she was just like, and I was just like, oh no. So now tomorrow, it was good. The learning aspect for me is like, tomorrow we're going to meet. I'm going to talk about like, hey, here is when I'm doing these lessons, here's all the experience that goes into it. And so here's how I'm going to break it down. Here's the goal. I have to go back to do really big breakdowns and actually teach her all the stuff just to make sure that she does have the authority when those kids only have her in the classroom. Because there's nothing worse than standing up in front of a group of kids and they ask a question and you try to make up an answer and then you're wrong. That's the worst. So I'm very excited for that because it's like, hey, I'm going to give you 3 strategies that you can use today during this. Because we're doing the same lesson tomorrow with a different piece of stuff. And I'm going to do she's going to do the morning and I'll do the afternoon. So it's good because it gives us a lot of chance to collaborate around how the lessons went. But I was just like the whole time, and this is why I have to get out of the classroom when she's here, is because the whole time I'm just like, no, that is not, be louder. So that's my big fail for the day, but I'm excited to see it turn into something good tomorrow. So.
I have a student teaching story from when I was student teaching. Brandon,
Okay,
you'll
sure.
appreciate this. I was student teaching in AP US History, and I was supposed to teach about Alexander Hamilton's fiscal policies, his banking system. And my co-teacher was amazing. She tried to make a chart for me to show me, like, this is how you go, like she tried to chart it all out for me. And I sat there and looked at it forever. And finally I was like, I do not get this. You have to, I cannot teach this. And even today, if someone asked me to teach about Alexander Hamilton and the banking system, I would be like, ask Brandon Harley. I have no clue. Something with the banks, National Bank. I can sing you songs from Hamilton. You mean America's Bank. Anyway, that's about all I can do.
Yeah, in my life, I've never even taught that. I mean,
Yeah.
there's little things, you talk about, but ins and outs.
I don't know why she wanted me to teach it.
I don't have the time to, spend a whole day on that.
My fail has been, I know this is going to be a weird one, but that's what I'm thinking of right now. I am not packing myself enough food to bring to school because I'm so rushed in the mornings. I know this is so weird, but it's true. And it's not like we really have a cafeteria I can go get more food from. I guess I could go get one of the packed lunches. But by the time I get to like 1:30, I'm like super hungry and tired, and it's in the day and I still have 2 periods to go. And so that's my fail. It was like my brain is like fizzing out. And also, I don't know, I'm having trouble keeping track of what day of the week it is. So like I can't tell if like today's Friday or Monday or I don't know.
You have a rotating schedule?
No, our schedule's now like yours. We're doing Monday. Well, except your Monday is our Wednesday. So we're doing afternoon cohort, morning cohort, but Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday.
Mm-hmm.
So
that helps me keep track of my days. I don't know if Brian's the same way. I'm like on an A day, I got this. On a B day,
it's like, oh, today's an avid day. That's a good day. And today's not an avid day. That's a good day in a different way. Because I have both my avid classes in the same day, so it's like, it's the best. It's the best.
My prep rotates too, so I know which day is which based on which day I have my prep. And
all right, Brandon, do you have a fail that you want to share? You don't have to. You're a guest.
Right before we started this, I ran down to use the restroom, and in case I had an emergency during our interview here, I didn't want to have to run out, but I got down there, and as I turned to leave, I realized I wasn't wearing my mask. It's the first time I've been in the building and I wasn't wearing this thing. And I think I was just thinking about this interview and a couple other things on my mind. I just got up and walked down the hall. No students, nobody else in the hall, but it dawned on me that something was different. I was like, what's different? I don't have a mask on, and I kind of freaked out. It was just the realization that it's that normal kind of walking around is not normal anymore. But I haven't had any big failures other than just kind of that Brian part there.
That Brian fart? Is that what you just call it? Thanks. I love it. I'm owning that. All right, so today we're going to talk about what I call justified inflexibility. So in a previous episode, we talked about what we can do to prepare students for next year, that our responsibility to help them get the most out of this year is probably not the only thing that we should be doing, and that our students, when they get to school next year, they're not going to remember how to be in school. And so we have to be able to prepare them by doing things this year to connect to those things next year, procedures and practices. But I have a fear that teachers are not going to remember how to teach next year, or they have the best excuse in the world next year to be very inflexible with their classroom practices and with how they treat students. Because right now we have the best excuse ever. COVID happened. We could not teach students everything. We were very lax. We have given students a ton of understanding. And since we have done that, I think it's called moral licensing. You do a little bit of good, and then you never have to be good again because you already did the good thing. So it's like you vote for Obama, then you don't ever have to care about race relations because you voted for Obama, is how Malcolm Gladwell talks about it. So because we were so flexible this year, I think it's going to be very easy for teachers to be inflexible next year. No late assignments, not giving students second chances. Even like me as a teacher, because and like I told you before, and I'll stop right after this, I was thinking about things that I would change when we got back into school. And I had a list of things like, okay, I won't accept late assignments. I'm going to make sure that I don't take things past the due date at all. I'm not going to do any extra credit. But those are things that I did before COVID. Like I had those practices. I accepted late assignments before COVID because I want students to show learning and get it done. So why would I change my teaching practices after COVID? And I think that it's really easy for us to get stuck in that trap. So the question that I have is, what are we going to do to help our peers or to encourage teachers to fight that justified inflexibility of coming back to school after a pandemic? And I mean coming back to full time in school after a pandemic. Because right now we're in school, but it's still not the same.
Should I start? I think we're gonna have to remind everyone and ourselves over and over again that the pandemic isn't actually over, even when it's over, but it won't be over for education, right? Like the need for flexibility will still be really intense once we're back in person with all kids for the full entire day. But my concern, piggybacking off of what you said, Brian, is that, and I've mentioned this before, is that I'm afraid of hearing the phrase, and you're already starting to hear it, well, that student isn't ready for my class. This is why, thinking about Brandon with AP history, right? That's not that would happen, but
Right.
that in that world, right? Well, that student isn't ready to take the level of rigor that my class is because
of COVID.
It's
not their fault. It's not
but
teachers' faults.
So then I get to just slough off everything and not. And the answer, I think, is going to be and you referred to this, Brian, it's got to come from really high quality instruction. So what we need is a reminder on how to do that. I mean, I imagine, do you think it'll be kind of like riding a bike? Like it'll kind of just come back to us? I mean, I assume so. I mean, I've been doing this a long time. Brandon, I think you and I started about the same time. I started in 2000. So I've been doing this for 20 years. So I think it'll be, it's not like it's all gone. It's still in my head, but I could use some support in remembering how to do it.
Do you think that that's mainly your own psychological need, or just that because you're a pro, you know what you're doing, and it's just the road's been a little bumpy for the last 12 months, but teaching's still teaching. It's just rounding the corners or sharpening the edges, right? Is that what you're referring to, or?
Yeah, but it's almost kind of like I forgot. Not that yeah. Right now, because of the way everything is set up, and I'm trying to keep everyone 6 feet of distance and all, I don't do a lot of what I would normally be doing. Yeah. So once I have the freedom to go back and do what I normally would do, it's like I'm going to need almost like a refresher course on what I normally did. I do think part of it might be like, sorry, there's Lily. she's tired of this conversation. We're too boring for her. Is like just talking to other teachers who teach the same thing as you. Like, I hope that there will be time set up for us to just collaborate and just remind ourselves, oh yeah, think, pair, share, and you know, all of these different teaching strategies that we have filed away. But also, you know, I do think you are right that part of it is like confidence, because we haven't had the normal feedback that we normally get in terms of like how we're doing. And so I don't know if everyone's going to be feeling ready to go confidence wise. Sorry, there's the dog. Once September rolls around, imagining that September is kind of more normal than it has been.
Did you find, were you online only for the first part of the year? When did your kids start to come back in person?
We started a week before you guys.
Okay. So I don't know if you felt the same way, Brian or Malia, that everybody's situation is a little different, but my ability and confidence returned when the students came back. That interaction that I had with kids allowed me to feel better about the way that I did things. And just like you having to turn your camera off, or Brian muting himself now, you know, having that lack of fluid connection really got to me. And the learning aspect of it is much more prevalent in class now, just because I can see it and interact with it. And I get the juice from my students too. You know, it's where it's at. And I'm not really worried about it coming back. That confidence part of it, I get. It just seems it's been so distant. But the skill part of it comes and goes, and I try to build on that anyway. Right? It's the face-to-face being here in the room with the energy that I need to be good at what I do. That knocks my confidence down when I don't have that interaction. So.
Yeah, I think having the direct feedback from students has been really good, like for feeling like I'm going right back into school. I do remember when we went from that 7-period or 6-period day to block scheduling, that it was really hard for a lot of teachers. And to me, it has not been hard going back to a shorter schedule. And I don't think it'll be super hard going to a longer schedule, as long as I don't get addicted to that direct feedback. Because the more direct feedback that you get, the more you're going to continue talking to get that direct feedback. So it won't be like a lecture situation, but I think there'll be a temptation, at least for me, to continue to entertain and then to just go way, way afar from the topic at hand. But also I think that, I mean, I went to a performance last night, and it was really clear that the people doing like sound and lights for the performance were way out of practice. And there are people who do it a lot. And I started to realize, well, if we go back to full-time block in the fall, and I might think that I can be successful, and then all of a sudden I could be way out of practice and I won't know it until that time. That's kind of scary. You know what's really scary is, are we going to be over stimulated when we see faces? Like right now I'm starting to learn how to see if people are engaged just by using their eyes, you know? And when we add that face, is it going to be too much information? That's an aside. I shouldn't have jumped on that, but it might be a little scary.
So I have a bit of an aside, but it's connected to what you just said, Brian. So today, one of my 10th graders said to me, he's playing baseball and they just had their first baseball game. And he said to me, that was my first baseball game ever at high school, because last year the pandemic happened. And so they had no season. Now he had just had his first game after his first week of practice, because they literally started just a week ago. And he was like, we did our best, Mr. Singer, but we just really didn't know, you know, and they're 10th graders. Now, a year from now, he and I were talking, when he's juniors, he'll finally, hopefully, maybe get to play a full season. But all he's had is pandemic, 9th grade year, and then 10th grade year, the shortest season possible. And then he's going to be an 11th grader in baseball. So that kind of like realization of the process, and that they're trying like crazy, but he's like, the first inning, the 10th grade pitcher hit, you know, he hit 6 kids with the ball, you know? So that's going to be happening though in our classrooms, and we're just going to have to accommodate it. I do think coaches in some ways have some of the best analogies, because they're able to see how you
Yeah, the
have to break it
physical.
down and hit skill, and you meet kids where they're at rather than where you want them to be at.
Yeah, I think that that is proof that we have to be more flexible next year because there's going to be a lot. I mean, I think we make assumptions all the time about what kids come in knowing and not really diagnosing where they're at. And if we don't take the time to diagnose where they're at, it's not just going to be like, oh, I didn't know you didn't know what a sonnet was. It's going to be like, oh, I didn't know that you didn't know to put together sentences, which is what we've been reading and writing for the longest time now. Um, we did talk about conflict last episode, you know, and not avoiding conflicts coming back to school for those Seattle teachers. So for teachers who in general do not like conflict, what do we do about the teachers who are being inflexible or who are saying, hey, COVID did this to this kid and I can't fix them. So it's not really, I don't need to spend the time doing it. Like, what should we as teacher leaders be expected to do in those situations?
You waiting for me to respond? I don't think that's a COVID thing. I think that's a personality thing. And that's just a symptom of somebody who's got a specific strain of or a way of going about teaching that come on, inflexibility isn't one of the COVID-19 symptoms, right? It's it's a fail-safe. It's a way to blame, and whether that happens because of COVID or otherwise, that's a symptom of something else. And unwilling to, you know, I don't know, Malia, you mentioned something about coaching, and I'm curious. I'm not coaching anymore. I don't know if I told you that or not. I resigned after the last year, after 20 years of coaching. So before COVID, but I'm often finding myself not getting so worked up about certain things. Do you think that just in the nature of the idea of athletics and competitions like that, where you're forced to make a lot of quick decisions that change a thing, and then you have repetition and practice, and things never go the way you plan for an event, that you think that there's some coaching like I mean, I see people, Scott Devereaux is a good friend of mine, you know, and he's just this guy all the time, right? Some of the people that have been exposed to those ups and downs more maybe handle these ups and downs a little bit better. Is that something you think about?
I actually have, because I've been talking to coaches on my staff about, like when I say things like, I'm worried that there will people make excuses like, oh, as I mentioned before, like, oh, the student isn't ready. When I talk to coaches, they say, well, we get that all the time, right? Like we get kids all the time who don't know how to throw a baseball,
Right.
but you have to teach them the fundamentals. And so that's what we're gonna have to do. We're just, and they're like, yeah, and you break down the skills and you teach them the fundamentals and you don't worry about, and you get them as far as you can, right?
Right.
And the
Yep.
goal is, like you mentioned before, relationship building, face-to-face interaction, learning how to work with each other, learning how to be on a team, learning how to have fun with each other again, because our kids have not had fun with each other collaboratively as a group. In a school setting, they have not had fun. They're not having fun right
No.
now in a long time. And so, like, those are all things that we can embrace. And so maybe we need to think of ourselves less as teachers and more as like teacher coaches.
Yeah, or maybe we need to ask coaches to become the leaders of that kind of I'm not going to say training because that turns people off, I think, but the
No.
leaders in that kind of mindset next year, because they're the ones who are doing it all the time right now.
Yeah,
For
there's a
sure.
lot of metaphors for it that go into it. I mean, the times I felt like I was doing my best coaching because I was coaching my ass off was the years we were getting killed and having no success. But those are the years you're really putting it on and trying to do the much, and there's frustration and everything that goes with it. The years where you have the most talent, the most ability, you're just, you're pushing it, pushing it, pushing it. And the years you have the kids in the class that have the most talent, sometimes that feels like there's not as much barriers and obstacles that you have to kind of get past. So having a kid come into my class and somebody saying they're not ready, like no kid is ready for any class. I don't get that mentality at all. I mean, if you want to go by the books, then Lee, you know this, if a kid leaves a sophomore world history or world studies class, they're supposed to come into my class and they've learned all these things. They haven't. I know they haven't. It's not on the teachers. It's on the kids too. It's like, you got to reteach everything. And any kid who comes into my class, I assume that they know nothing about any history other than what their parents might tell them that they saw on Facebook. So, which I just assume is all, it's all myth and how it goes. So I don't buy into the idea that kids aren't ready for your class or they're not ready. No kid is ready for, who's ready for this? Are you ready to teach in a pandemic? Are you ready to coach a football game when you got 12 guys, one sub? No, I mean, is your kid ready to go out and play baseball after playing one high school game against 18-year-old guys who are scary men? No. What do? You do it, and you get a little better, and you just keep getting after it. What's the big deal? I mean, you can fear it or embrace it. I've chosen not to fear that stuff, and frankly, I don't care what other people think, so that helps.
That's great. I think that's a great spot to just like pause, because I think that's important, and it's all on all of us to do that for ourselves. But we are definitely at time for our video. So we're going to do a quick sign off. Once again, to everyone out there watching, all 31 of you, or 22 of you, and then the one person who did it 9 times, please continue to view our podcast. Feel free to hit like and subscribe if you want. I mean, if you do, that only helps us get some feedback. If you have questions or topic suggestions, or you need help with anything, and you're a teacher or a student, put a comment in on YouTube, and we'll definitely look at it, because you'll be the first one. So that's pretty fantastic. Again, my name is Brian Higgins. Malia is right down there. And this is Brandon Harley, and I'm sure we'll have him back at some point in the future. Thank you so much for clicking on our video today. All right, have a wonderful day.